Madam Presiding Officer, thank you for the opportunity to join the debate to give the Executive Council authority to take immediate steps to establish the institutional structure for the implementation of the Town and Country Planning function by the Assembly in accordance with the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996. Madam Presiding Officer, in my contribution to this debate, I will spend some time looking at the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act 2014, as well as the current Town and Country Planning approval process, and then I will conclude. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to place on the record that in principle, the minority supports the spirit of this motion, and all efforts to give the Tobago House of Assembly greater autonomy over the functions of not only the town and country planning, but all other functions set out in the 5th schedule of Act 40 of 1996. And Madam Presiding Officer, as we consider the motion, the following questions come to mind. What are the objectives of this motion? What is the Executive Council seeking to achieve? Can this be done under the current legal and regulatory framework? What are the steps that should be taken before moving in the direction that the motion intends? And finally, what is the most appropriate or the proper way to getting what the Executive Council wants done? And Madam Presiding Officer, in principle, I reiterate, members on this side, members of the minority, support the motion. However, notwithstanding all the name calling, we are uncertain that what the Executive Council hopes to achieve can be done under the current legal framework. And Madam Presiding Officer, this was demonstrated clearly as the minority leader read into the records the judgment in relation to the reforestation and watershed program in the matter between the Tobago House of Assembly and the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. And I repeat, notwithstanding all the names that he is being called, the matter of the fact is that the court ruled on this matter. And the judgment is that, notwithstanding Section 25, the Tobago House of Assembly cannot enter into such arrangements. Madam Presiding Officer. And Madam Presiding Officer, with that said, and notwithstanding the limitations of this current legal framework, both in relation to Section 35 of the Constitution, Section 37 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, as well as the current Town and Country Planning Act, Chapter 35, I would humbly advise the Executive Council to consider, and the Chief Secretary in his piloting of the motion would have mentioned in passing, consider the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act, PAFD 2014, and the provisions therein. And Madam Presiding Officer, I want to take a little time to highlight some of the provisions of the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act 2014. And the Chief Secretary would have highlighted some benefits and advantages that the motion currently before us presents. But I also want to say, based on a 2021 Joint Select Committee report on the Finance and Legal Affairs, it is stated that the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act 2014 will also bring the benefits that the Chief Secretary would have outlined, as the Act seeks to, inter alia, 1, decentralize the administration of planning, devolution of development planning, and control functions of the Tobago House of Assembly. The Act also seeks to simplify the certification and adoption process in the preparation and development of plans. And it also seeks to enhance the enforcement and the provisions of stricter penalties through an increase in fines, immediate compliance orders, and development repair orders for contravention of land use regulations. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I think what this motion seeks to do, the PAFD Act 2024, can assist in doing such things. And it must be noted, Madam Presiding Officer, that this act of which I speak intends to repeal and replace the Town and Country Planning Act, Chapter 3501, and upon full proclamation, will dissolve the Town and Country Planning Division and establish a national planning authority. This, therefore, will give greater devolution of authority to process applications for simple developments in the Tobago House of Assembly. And Madam Presiding Officer, this is clearly set out in the Act, and it is enshrined in this Act. And under Section 3.1, Madam Presiding Officer, the THA is established as a planning authority. And Section 3.1 states that the planning authority means, and first on the list, A, the Tobago House of Assembly; B, a municipal planning authority; C, a special planning authority or a joint planning authority appointed under Section 16 of the Act. And Madam Presiding Officer, as we seek to improve the effectiveness of the development planning process, I think two main aspects of this exercise can be identified. And one, it looks to national and regional development strategies and plans. And of course, in this area, we will look at national and local area plans, identify where the development is taking place, identify and analyze the trends, and in the Tobago context, prepare a physical development plan. And Madam Presiding Officer, the Planning and Facilitation of Development Act provides under Section 19 for the THA to prepare physical development plans for Tobago subject to the National Spatial Development Strategy. And Section 19 states, and I quote, "The Tobago House of Assembly and a municipal planning authority shall, on its own motion, in accordance with directions in writing from the National Planning Authority, prepare and thereafter review as often as necessary, and in any event, at least once every 5 years, such regional, local, and other development plans for which regions and areas within their respective jurisdictions and on such subjects as would assist in the efficient and equitable planning and management of land." And Madam Speaker, every speaker on the majority side basically outlined that this is what the motion seeks to do. And based on the PAFD Act, the Tobago House of Assembly can do such. And Madam Presiding Officer, the other aspect of the development planning process deals with development approvals. And this, of course, is where applications are received and approvals are granted for the development of lands. And Madam Presiding Officer, the Act also provides for the THA to grant or refuse planning permission subject to certain conditions set out in Section 48, and with a right of appeal to a national planning authority and the Environmental Commission for final appeal. And Madam Presiding Officer, again, Section 37(1) states clearly that the National Planning Authority or a planning authority as defined in Section 3(1), which includes the Tobago House of Assembly, may, after taking into account all material considerations, A, grant permission to develop land unconditionally, grant permission to develop land subject to conditions, or C, refuse permission to develop lands. And therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, this Planning and Facilitation of Development Act provides, in my view, for the spirit of what is intended in Section 15 of the 5th Schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996. And as the minority leader pointed out, and also the Chief Secretary would have indicated, that a lot of work has been done or has started in putting the THA's house in order in preparation for full proclamation of the Act. And it is my humble advice to the Executive Council to continue and build on the work already started and in train. And Madam Presiding Officer, there is no secret that there has been delays in the full proclamation of the legislation, and in accordance with the Joint Select Committee report on Finance and Legal Affairs, the completion of institutional arrangements, the completion of subsidiary legal legislation, and other independent legislation, such as the miscellaneous provisions, local government reform bill, which is currently before the Parliament. The debate started yesterday. The land subdivision code, the built and natural heritage order, tree preservation order, and control of advertisement regulations. And Madam Presiding Officer, these are some of the reasons for the delays in the full proclamation of the legislature. And I am aware, based on the report of the Joint Select Committee, that steps are in train and work has started in the preparation for the full proclamation of the bill. And Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding the work to ensure full proclamation of the Act, it is my view that the Executive Council can, in the interim, seek to improve the efficiency of the current processes. It is my information that currently the process for approval includes not only the Town and Country Department, but also divisions and departments of the Tobago House of Assembly. So before the Town and Country Department grants approvals, the building plans must be stamped at the Division of Settlements or at the Land Management Unit under the Office of the Chief Secretary. After the Town and Country Planning Department grants the planning permission, which it should be reiterated that these planning permissions are approved in Tobago, the application goes to the Public Health Department. At this point, it may be sent to the Division of Food Production or the Division of Infrastructure. And this is based on the condition or the category of development. And after the necessary approvals are obtained from these divisions, it goes to the Office of the CMOH, then to the Planning Department in the Office of the Chief Secretary, where the building permit is issued. And this process, I am told, is repeated when the applicant applies for a completion certificate. And Madam Presiding Officer, Based on the process outlined, there are several divisions and departments of the Tobago House of Assembly included in the approval process. And because there are so many included, there may be some delays from moving between divisions and departments. Further, Madam Presiding Officer, it is the understanding of the minority that even with the full proclamation of the Act 2014, these said divisions and departments may still be included or may still be required for the approval process. And it may therefore be necessary as well as prudent to review the approval process within the divisions which the Executive Council now has control, with a view to improve the efficiency of the approval process in these divisions. And Madam Presiding Officer, as I conclude my presentation, I am reminded of the words of a former Chief Secretary. And he says, if you diagnose incorrectly, you will prescribe incorrectly. And therefore, the Executive Council should ask a very fundamental question. Can this motion be achieved? And does the THA have the authority to implement a town and country planning function given the current legal framework? And Madam Presiding Officer, this question should be answered. And finally, the Executive Council should consider how it will overcome or even circumvent the current challenges faced and identified. And Madam Presiding Officer, as I indicated in my introduction, in principle, the minority supports the motion. However, we are uncertain if the Executive Council is able to efficiently achieve its intention given the current legal parameters. And Madam Presiding Officer, the minority or leader would have alluded to it in the Reforestation Act between the Tobago, the Reforestation Order, between the Tobago House of Assembly and the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Presiding Officer, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this debate.